Okay, you're at home. Now what? Don't worry, I've got your back. Today, we're going to learn how to work with strobe lights while you are home. You're listening to the Master Your Lens podcast, episode 155.
Hey, John Lee Dumas here, the founder and host of EO Fire, and welcome to the Master Your Lens podcast, the photography podcast dedicated to sharing inspiring stories, technical tips, and powerful secrets to help you become a better photographer. And now, your host, Matthew Jordan Smith.
Hello, Photography Nation. Welcome to today's podcast. It's April 1st, 2020. If you're like a lot of us, you spent more time at home than you normally do, and maybe you're wondering what to do with your time. Well, today I'm here to help you. Since we have more time, let's improve our skill set. Today, we're going to work with strobe lights and go into a few things that can help you take better images using strobe light. Now, if you are a photographer and you don't have any type of strobe light, don't worry about it. Stay with me, because hopefully there's something here that can help you as well. Okay, raise your hands. How many of you have strobe lights? Wherever you are around the world, I'm imagining I can see you with your hand up. But it's a big world out there, so raise your hands a little higher. Okay, now I see you. Today we're going to talk about this, how to work with strobe lights. But before we dive into that, I want to go into the world before you ever get a strobe light. You see, I remember those days when I was just starting out and didn't have lights. I was only working with natural light. And because we see that all the time, it wasn't that hard to understand. The one thing I did have to learn, however, was how to see light the way my camera sees light. That was a little difficult in the beginning. But back then, we were shooting film. There was a cost involved. So you'd shoot a roll of film, take that film to the lab, have it processed. It comes back. You're excited to see that roll of film, and then the pictures don't look the way you expect. Now, you just paid your hard-earned cash to learn this lesson, so you learn it fast. You try to figure out what you did wrong and why your pictures didn't look the way you imagined them to look. And you learn fast this way because every roll of film costs, but there's this motivation to figure it out. And when you do, when you finally figure this thing out, shoot a roll of film, take it to the lab, get it back, and it looks the way you imagined, that feels so good. Now, I'm still talking about shooting with natural light. You had to figure that out. You had to learn how to see the way your camera sees. Now, working with strobe light, in many ways, it's that same process. So today, you're not taking a picture, taking it to the lab, waiting to get it back. Today, you take a picture and you can see right away your results. That part has changed. But you still need to go through the process of figuring it out, how to make your pictures look the way you imagine them to look when you use strobe light. So first, let's discuss the actual strobe light. Whether you're using a speed light or you're using high-end strobe lights, the light that comes out of your strobe unit is this raw, hard, punchy light. And for some things, that's fine. The very first strobe images I ever took, they were done with a speed light, a raw flash on top of my camera, giving a hard light. And that is a look. A bare bulb flash. In the early days of flash, that was a look. I think back to those early days of flash and news photography. One picture that pops into my mind is from the JFK assassination. that Lee Harvey Oswald black and white photograph. Can you see the picture? That's a hard light, a hard on-camera flash. Images taken in the 50s and the 60s. Those bare bulb flash images have a look. It's very raw, in your face, gutsy. And while that was a look, it may have been too harsh for other uses. So we discovered how to make the light a little softer. Now, if you don't have a high-end strobe unit, you may have some type of on-camera flash, some type of speed light. I'm going to admit, when I was a kid, using on-camera flash, speed lights, for the first time, I had no idea how to control them. And to be honest, they scared me. Very often, I'd have too much light, and I'd blast a subject out. It took a while to learn how to use a strobe in that fashion, to use the speed lights. And having control back then was hard to do, until I discovered through testing how to get the right exposure. And back then, I'd set my flash to the same setting. I make sure I was using the same aperture, same shutter speed, same ISO film. Back then it was called ASA. And I got comfortable being at the same distance when I used that on-camera strobe. I didn't know it, but back then I was learning about light and distance to get a consistent look. If you have a speed light, do me a favor, grab your camera and put it on right now. Doesn't matter which brand of camera you have, doesn't matter which speed light you have, just grab your light and put it on your camera. Today, cameras have gotten very smart, and your speed light has gotten very smart. Today, you can set your camera to automatic along with your strobe light, along with your speed light, and that combination will work, for the most part, very well. When it comes to speed lights, there's a higher end speed light made by Profoto, the A1. A lot of my friends who are wedding photographers love the A1 strobe light. And even though it's not called a speed light, it kind of sort of is. If you're not comfortable using your speed light while you're home this month, practice taking pictures at different settings until you know your distance and your light and your camera to get the exact effect you want. Find something that's 4 feet away. Stand with your camera and your speed light at 4 feet and take a picture. Take a look at your image. If you don't like what you see, before you take another image, take a look at all your settings. If your picture's overexposed, or if it's underexposed, I want you to find out why it's overexposed or underexposed. How much power is coming out of your speed light? Can you adjust that power? What is the ISO on your camera? Can you adjust that in any way? I want you to find out why the image is not the way you want it before you take this second picture. Let's analyze that first image. This is something that we don't do enough of. We take a picture, don't like it, and right away we'll make a small change and take another picture. I've seen this happen way too much, but first thing I want you to do from now on, if you take a picture with your strobe light of any type and you don't like the image, stop and figure out why. Before you take that next picture, I want you to find out why it doesn't look the way you want. Analyze the image. Is the exposure off in any way? Or is it the quality of the light you don't like? We've briefly discussed exposure. It could be a combination of things. Your ISO, your aperture, or the amount of light coming out of your strobe unit. But also, it could be you don't like the light because maybe it's too harsh. If the light is too harsh, think about what you can do to that light to change the light. Remember your first pictures? For all of us, the very first pictures probably were not great. And if they were, we just got lucky. We didn't understand why first. But now we have the time to find out why. I want you to get comfortable asking yourself, why? Why do you like the picture, or why don't you like the picture? Before you take another image, stop and dissect that picture. Look at the light. Really look at the light. Look at the shadows, wherever they are, and find out what you can do to change them. Now stay in that same position wherever you are. Take another picture of the same thing. Now, whatever you shot for your first picture, you're going to shoot the exact subject in the same way, but make an adjustment to only one element at a time. This way you'll find out what you're doing right or what you're doing wrong. If you change any setting, only change one at a time to find out what you've done wrong. For example, if you take a picture and it's too bright and you don't understand why, only change either the power of your light first to find out where it should be. Maybe your strobe is at full power, so maybe you can cut it down to half the power. If it's at a half and it's still too bright, cut it down to a quarter of the power, but go down in those increments. I want you to take this time and really learn your gear. Learn how light works. Learn how your light works. Now, if you have something more advanced than a speed light, like, for example, a Pro Photo Strobe, when you get into the higher, more controllable types of strobes, it's best to use a light meter. If you're making that jump from a speed light to a conventional strobe light, and you really want to understand strobe lights, start by making another investment into a light meter. Sekonic makes some amazing light meters. Last month, I gave away 4 light meters to 4 lucky people. And by the way, congratulations to all those winners from last month. They will all be receiving their light meters sometime this month in April. Because of our current situation, things are happening a little slower since a lot of people are not in the office these days. But those meters will be going out the end of April. And to the winners again, congratulations. Now let's get back to the higher end strobe gear. When I first began working with strobe lights, the higher end strobe lights, I was a student in art school. And the very first way I used a strobe was through an umbrella. My very first images with conventional strobe lights, I used a standard white umbrella, white on the inside, black on the outside, and bounced the light. All of my very first assignments were done with this type of light, this type of modifier, a standard umbrella. In the beginning, I never liked those images. And to this day, I still don't like using a standard white umbrella, not as my main source of light. But the great thing about it, it taught me how to see light. I didn't know it back then, but I didn't like the light. And I didn't know why I didn't like the light. I just knew there's something was not quite right. This is a great time for self-discovery, to find out what type of light you like, what type of modifier you like, and yes, an umbrella is a modifier. Find out what type of modifier you like. If you love using a softbox, which is a very popular modifier, as a matter of fact, it's the most popular modifier on the market. If you have one, pull it out, put it on your strobe, and experiment this month. Use the modifier you have in as many ways as possible. This is a great time to experiment with light. Find out what you like and find out what you don't. Pick one subject you can shoot this entire month. It doesn't have to be a person. It can be an object. But practice on one thing for the entire month. If you can, leave your light set up in the same place and make a catalog of your tests. The more you experiment, the more you're going to learn. Guaranteed. If you only have one type of light and one modifier, that's fine. That's all you need. This is not about having a lot of gear. Just use what you have in the space where you are and start testing your light. Start with no modifier whatsoever. Then try bouncing that light off your ceiling. Then turn your light behind you. Bounce the light from behind you. Then add a modifier. Change the distance, if you can, of the modifier. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's say you have a standard white umbrella. Put that white umbrella in your strobe, and on the stem of the umbrella, move it out so it's as far away as it can be from your light. Take a picture like that. Now, move your umbrella closer in toward your light, maybe halfway on the stem of the umbrella. Take another picture. Now, move the stem even closer in so the umbrella is very close to your strobe light. Take another image. Each time you take an image, look and dissect the image. Then compare them side by side. This is how you begin learning how to work with your strobe light. It doesn't matter what type of strobe you have, what type of camera you have, what type of lens you have. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that you start testing so you know your gear and your light. This is the beginning of mastering your light. And this is your assignment for April. Get to work. You've got the time. By the end of this month, you'll know more than you knew at the start of the month. Have fun, take pictures, and document your process. I look forward to talking to you again, this time next week on the Master Your Lens podcast. Do me a favor. If you are not in our free Facebook group, come and join today. Photography Lighting Ninjas on Facebook. Oh, and by the way, do yourself a favor. Set a time each day you're going to spend time working on your lights. Spend 1 hour working with your gear. If you want, make it 1 hour per day or 1 hour once a week. It's totally up to you. Whatever is comfortable for you and your schedule. But write it in, set that time, put it on your calendar, and stick to it for the month of April. All right, everyone. Thank you for your time again. Our free Facebook group is Photography Lighting Ninjas. Make sure you join us there. Post your pictures. Post your tests. Just because you're by yourself doesn't mean it has to stay that way. Just because you're doing this on your own at home doesn't mean you can't share it with the world. Come into our group, Photography Lighting Ninjas, and post your pictures all this month. I look forward to seeing what you're going to do. All right, everyone, have a great week. I look forward to talking to you again next week on the Master Your Lens podcast. I'm Matthew Jordan Smith, signing out for now. Always dream big. Bye for now.